Part 52. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 512. Greet stared closely at the patient's intestinal blood vessels, his mind racing. Thrombolytic drugs, no. Magic anticoagulation cannot be used for thrombolysis. The attempt to remove the disease failed. I tried a cleaning technique and tried to remove the blood clot from the blood vessel, but it still failed. In his mind, all the magic, divine arts, and medicines he knew passed by one. There is one more magic available, necromantic magic, thalassemia. Using this magic, the target's blood can be turned into seawater, causing damage. The casting material is a drop of seawater. If the seawater is replaced with saline, the blood in this section of the blood vessel should be converted into saline. But the problem is that this is a 5th level magic, and Gretel doesn't know it. Is there any other method that can be used? Gretel, what are you troubled about? The silver dragon girl stretched her head to look in the direction of the patient's head. Although Leon Carlos did not dare to stretch his head, he looked at Gretel with curiosity, and then at that section of intestine, although he could not see the reason. Gretel looked confused and pointed it out to them. There are blood clots blocking it. I'm wondering what method can be used to make these blood clots disappear, if there is no medicine for thrombolysis, if there is thrombus removal. How about removing the thrombus? Sirara asked impatiently. As he asked, he spread his fingers, eager to try. Can your vine be able to reach into the blood vessels and remove the blood clots? Reach into the blood vessels? Easier said than done. Gretel smiled bitterly. It can't be that easy. Look at these blood vessels, they are so thin, my vines can't reach in. The length of this superior mesenteric artery, which is suspected to be blocked by thrombus, is 30-40 cm, but its inner diameter is only 0.6 plus minus 0.09 centimeters. If it were its lower blood vessels, which are the branches that supply blood to this section of the intestine, the inner diameter would be as thin as a hair. He wants to control the vines to enter from the femoral artery, twist and bend all the way in, and then divide it into 4, 1 into 6, and 1 into 8, to tie up and drag out the blood clots. His precision in controlling the vines is truly amazing. Not to this extent. So, what about cutting it? Cut it and take it out. She squinted her eyes, raised her palm like a knife, and made a long slash, making a cut gesture. And then cure it? Greet shook his head quickly. It is possible to cut all of this length and thickness, take out the thrombus, and then heal the blood vessel, but the prognosis will be very poor. Cut the blood vessels as little as possible, and make the incision as short as possible. If the inner diameter of blood vessels is slightly bumpy, it will lead to changes in hemodynamics. Then, blockages and blood clots will come to you one after another. Even arteriotomy and thrombectomy only make a small opening and use the blood flow of the artery itself to flush out the thrombus. If this section of blood vessel is a branch blood vessel connected to the intestine, such a small blood vessel cannot be flushed out at all. So, then, I have an idea. Cyrilla, I have an idea. He suddenly jumped up. He formed a circle with his right hand, raised it to his eyes, and gestured. Celera, that magnifying glass, make me one. Quick. The kind I used to reattach amputated limbs before. Good. The light of the spell flickered and hit Gretel's face. Gretel held his breath and lowered his head. At this moment, the blood vessels less than 1 centimeter thick were magnified 5 to 6 times in his field of vision. With a single stroke of the scalpel, a small incision of less than 1 centimeter was made on the dark red blood vessel wall. Greet raised the tip of the knife and pointed at the opening of the blood vessel. Cleaning technique. The faint fluorescence of the magic trick shrouded silently. The area covered by the cleansing technique is a cube of 1 foot each in 3 directions, length, width, and height. Of course, a skilled magician can lengthen, widen, or flatten this square. For example, if you control it to be 1 inch high and 3 feet square, you can easily clean the wall. Well, almost all academic magicians have the experience of climbing on scaffolding and cleaning the exterior walls of buildings inch by inch. If the spell is well controlled, the cleaning area can be large with a single cast, and the work can be completed as quickly as possible. Greed had not experienced such high-intensity training. Even if you have experienced it, it is of no use now. His current operation requirement is to control the range of influence of the cleaning technique to be equivalent to the inner diameter of the blood vessels, so as not to remove things that should not be removed. Fortunately, I have a magnifying glass. With the assistance of a magic magnifying glass, Gretel carefully controlled the scope of the spell and advanced it bit by bit. Cleansing. Cleansing. Hey, it seems to be working, it really cleared up a bit. Then, keep pushing forward. The length that can be cleared with one cast is only 1 or 2 centimeters. Moreover, the further in, the greater the consumption. After advancing 7 to 8 centimeters, Gretel's mental strength had reached its limit. Trying to control it more precisely makes me feel dizzy and my ears are buzzing. But this is already very good. Greet breathed a sigh of relief, clamped the end of the cleaned blood vessel, healed the front end, and released it. The bright red blood immediately rushed over happily. Feasible. So, go ahead. Clean up a section, heal a section, let go a section. One more section to clean up, another section to heal, and one more section to let go. With blood vessels 30 to 40 centimeters long, plus branch blood vessels, Greet had to perform nearly 100 treatments. After the arterial thrombectomy is completed, continue to treat the vein with treatment. When all the treatments were finally completed, Gretel was so dizzy that he almost fell on the operating table. He lowered his head and closed his eyes, feeling stars flashing in front of his eyes. However, now was not the time to rest. Gretel could only pinch the tiger's mouth with his left hand and said in a low voice, "Warm salt water, cover it with warm salt water gauze. The water temperature should be higher than 37 degrees, probably, between 40 and 45 degrees. Carlos immediately rushed to do it. Heated the saline, cooled it with freezing rays, soaked it in gauze, picked it up with a mage's hand and twisted it slightly until it was wet but not dripping, and quickly covered it with the intestines. A series of movements flowed smoothly, without any need for Gretel's instructions. It was obvious that he was already familiar with it. Always pay attention to the temperature of the gauze and replace it every few minutes. Sarala was responsible for watching from the side. Change a piece of gauze and report good news. It's red, it's red. Gretel, you're red. The color of that section of intestine is red. It is no longer green and purple, it has become rosy. If it's red, that means it's alive. Gretel unconsciously smiled lightly. It's great that this old lady doesn't have to cut her intestines. It's great to have found a method of vascular thrombectomy. Next, I want to try to see if there is any way to remove the bolt through the air. It's great to have a new research topic. After confirming that the intestines had been saved, the subsequent obturator hernia surgery was no problem for Greet. He had become very familiar with this level of minor surgery during his time as an attending, and now that he was repeating it, he could do it with his eyes closed. And there's no need to sew. Just cut, bluntly separate, and return the intestines. Most of the work can be done by the healing arts. Even if there is a slight mistake, the healing arts can make up for it in time. It took an hour of surgery in the previous life, but Greet completed it in only 20 minutes with the help of Sarala. Then, he clapped his hands and called Carlos. Rinse, close the abdomen, leave it to you, can you take it off? Abel. What about me? Sarala pouted dissatisfiedly. Under the mask, there is a small bulge. Me too. Why don't you let me come? Staying with him in the hospital instead of returning to the Mage Tower, which is warm in winter and cool in summer. She got up in the middle of the night to save people. She is so busy that she is not even allowed to get started. This looks like an intern who didn't get a chance to sew leather. Greet was confident and smiled at her. This patient depends on you. Leon is finishing the treatment for the first time. If there is any problem, it is your treatment that will save the day. Leon, do you still remember the steps of finishing? Rinse with normal saline, suction, check for active bleeding, rinse with normal saline. Carlos answered smoothly. Then first heal the mesentery that was torn open before, and then close the abdomen layer by layer. Follow the previous steps of opening the abdomen in reverse. Use the hands of the mage to pull the layers of the abdominal cavity to ensure perfect alignment, and then use healing techniques to close it. Okay, do it. I'll watch. Gretel yawned slightly. After training apprentices for so long, they can finally be put to use. In other words, if you step down after completing the main part and leave the matters to others, you finally have the style of a great director. Carlos couldn't understand his emotion. This young necromancer, like every intern who is given the important task of sewing skin by his teacher or senior brother, blushed on his face and said loudly, "Okay, sir. Please feel free to leave it to me. Even if I say I'm worried, I really might be worried. As a newbie, things can go wrong anywhere. Otherwise, why am I still here watching and not washing my hands? Hey, pay attention to the salt water temperature. 37 degrees. It was above 40 degrees just now. Has it dropped now? Pick up the intestinal loops gently. Be gentle. Who told you to lift the intestines directly? Ah. Sir, patient, she. Cardiac arrest, I saw it. Don't be in a daze. Apply external pressure. So I told you to use gentle force, do you understand now? Greet ordered without any surprise. Although it is a small probability event, pulling the intestines and stimulating the vagus nerve may indeed cause arrhythmia. Otherwise, why would he have the electrocardiogram hanging all the time, and why would he stand by and watch? After many stumblings and various thrills, he finally succeeded in closing his belly. When the patient was pushed out of the operating room, Albert Knight saw his mother open her eyes, and his legs softened with gratitude and he almost knelt down. Don't. It's a good thing if everything goes well for the old lady. Gretel quickly stopped him. If you trust us, if you have the opportunity later, introduce a few patients here. For those who have not been cured by the treatment, let me try and see if it can help. Don't worry. Keep it with me. Knight Albert patted his chest and agreed repeatedly. Gretel gave him a smile, returned to the inner room, and immediately raised his fist vigorously. Yeah. Finally a new patient. Finally, I can no longer be a manure digger. 3,000 words. The last 10,000 rewards plus more have been paid off. There will be no more updates tomorrow. Even if a golden alliance drops now, we will postpone the update until the day after tomorrow. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Please give me the last monthly ticket this month. Please ask for the guaranteed monthly ticket for the next month tomorrow. Thanks to @GongYangJo for tipping 1,500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jiolan 2020. Chapter 513. Albert Knight means what he says. He himself is also a squadron leader of the city guards. He has been in the army for many years and has deep connections. After taking her mother back, she quickly introduced patients to Gretel one after another. There is poor healing and limping after fracture. Some people injured their hand tendons during a fight and could no longer use their strength. I choked on sewage during a water fight. I kept feeling chest tightness, shortness of breath, and out of breath. Although the people introduced were mainly level 3 and 4 warriors, and their ability to pay was not high, Greed was still very happy. For one treatment, 10 and 20 gold coins are also collected, and 40 and 50 gold coins are also collected. But, for those who don't have a high ability to pay. Come on, sign here, Gretel said with a smile. Collect your information. Don't worry, it only takes a few drops of blood, not more than 5 milliliters. If you don't have enough money, just sign an agreement and cooperate with the research. No matter you need it or not, X-ray, B ultrasound, electrocardiogram, and blood test are all available in one package. In short, these patients should not be allowed to think that Oak Grove Hospital only charges a small amount of money and treats them with everything. This is a right thing. Well, specifically blood tests. You warriors, whether you are training, competing, or going to the battlefield, you will inevitably fight and kill. Keep a blood type at the hospital so that if necessary, it will be more convenient to find someone for blood transfusion. Over this period of time, Greed has accumulated hundreds of blood sample pictures. Unfortunately, the image produced by Identify Bloodline is still too complicated and the corresponding point cannot be found. The new blood test magic is still not available, Sci. By the way, MS Philosophers Rose, how is the development of the magic of projecting meditation vision into reality? Gretel decided to find an opportunity to ask. Well, the best excuse is that Mr. Viper has any new information. The following Monday, after attending the teachers' regular meeting, Gretel casually found an excuse and quietly sneaked to the Tower of Songs of the Charm Control Department. Mrs. Alva, who came for the torture, was thrown 2 pieces of good news before she even opened her mouth. First of all, Gretel, what you want, the automatic electrocardiogram alarm spell, is ready. If you don't come today, I will send someone to send it to you. Great. Mrs. Alva, thank you so much, Gretel jumped up excitedly. ECG with automatic alarm. After I go back, I won't have to stare at you again. Don't rush to be happy yet. Mrs. Alva raised her hand and pressed it with a smile. Greed felt her mind wandering, her whole body became quiet, and she followed her gesture and sat back on the sofa. After being stunned for a moment, I realized something was wrong. Mrs. Alva, is this? It's a newly improved mechanized mind magic based on your brainwave research. The effect is much weaker, and it almost only has the power to calm people down. However, the spell consumption is also greatly reduced. Mrs. Alva said about the latest results. High spirits. The difficulty and cost have been reduced to level 1, and it is relatively easy among level 1. When you leave later, remember to take the spell scroll back with you. Well, that's not what I want to say. Another good news is, that assassin has been recruited. Gretel turned his head 3 times before pulling out the figure of Mr. Assassin from a large number of cases, magic, and research. He blinked and said curiously. What did he recruit? He is from the Kingdom of Rhine, a level 12 assassin who was personally sent by the Grand Inquisitor of the Church of the God of Glory to assassinate you. This is not important. The important thing is, do you know what else he recruited? Isn't this important? Am I not important, or is my assassination not important? Forget it, the assassin has been captured anyway and I am safe, it really doesn't matter. Gretel shook his head and followed Mrs. Alva's words and asked. What else did you recruit? I also collected a lot of various information, such as where he has performed what missions, who he has killed, who he has harmed, who he has threatened, and who he has won over. Well, do you know, who across the strait, the first son of the Lord of Ostend was killed by him. So what? Greet wanted to ask. He knew the Hall Strait, the narrowest strait between the Kingdom of Kent and the Western continent. The Carolingian kingdom and the glorious cult have warships patrolling the straits all year round. For the Parliament, Hall Strait is also the most important area for them to cause trouble on the opposite side and pick up the magicians who have escaped from the opposite side. The benefits of being able to win over a lord here, even if it just makes him more friendly to the Parliament, are self-evident. How? Is there any evidence? How can Parliament exploit this? Gretel asked a series of questions. Mrs. Alva smiled and gave a thumbs up. Not bad, not bad, I just mentioned it, you can think of these, it's really not like a research mage who is bored in the medical center every day. Well, let me tell you one by one from the beginning. The city of Ostend is the northernmost of the 7 cities in the chain of defenses across the Hall Strait. The Lord's wife is the daughter of a magician. They are a loving couple and have 2 sons. What a pity, Mrs. Alva said with her tongue. There is something wrong with the eldest son when he was born. It is said that he has been cursed. I have found many healers and they said that it cannot be cured unless the great prayer technique is used. According to the laws of the glorious Holy See, such a child cannot inherit the position of Lord. I had to send him to the countryside. I don't know what congenital disease it is. Gretel muttered secretly. That little son, the Lord, and his wife's baby, was killed by someone from the Holy See. A silk scarf used by a smallpox patient infected the child's nanny. By the time the Lord's wife found out, the child's smallpox had begun to attack, with pox all over his body and a high fever that would not go away. The pastor in the church made it very clear, the child is small and weak. Even if you use remove disease treatment, there is only less than half the chance. And this half chance. That kid didn't win the bet. The lords of Ostend were injured a few years ago, and that child is their last son. If this one dies, they can only let his nephew inherit. In the past 2 years, their lords have been very troubled. When he said this, his eyes suddenly lit up. He looked at Gretel up and down, making the person look a little hairy, and moved forward. By the way, can you cure that child who is said to be cursed? If you can cure it, he can inherit the position of Lord. In that case, at least within a few decades, we can have a local lord who is inclined to us. Gretel was speechless. He doesn't care about treating one more person, but tell me what's going on with that child. He said in vain that he was cursed and asked me if it could be cured. How would I know? So what is the condition of the child? Are there any medical records? Are there any previous diagnoses? If you have the chance, can you bring someone over so that I can take a look? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Give me this month's guaranteed monthly pass quickly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 514. Ask Mrs. Alva to describe what the Lord of Ostend looks like, what his personality is, what he likes to eat and drink, what unique hobbies he has, and who his best friend is. No problem. The master of confusion and control is the best at controlling people's hearts. Based on the bits and pieces of information in the Parliament, plus everything Mr. Viper learned from his half-month lurk, it was her job to create a vivid person and create an action plan based on it. But what disease did the child who was thrown into the countryside by the Lord of Ostend suffer from? She looked at Gretel. Gretel looked at her. Separated by the curling tea smoke, the 3-layered dessert plate with gold rim and white porcelain on the round coffee table, and the various small and exquisite desserts on the plate, it's so pitiful that in this kingdom of Kent, the afternoon tea snacks are just a little bit like that. Like this, the two people looked at each other, and one word came to each other's mind. A chicken talks to a duck. After a while, Mrs. Alva chuckled, picked up the teacup and took a sip. It is important for the parliament to capture the city, or at least make the city lord lean towards us. Master Nordmark, do you know how many people from the parliament die every year in Hall Strait? How many? There are more than 10 magicians. They came to join us from over there. They couldn't sneak across the strait and died at the hands of the glorious Holy See. 28 of them died last year. Greet was solemn. How difficult it is to train a magician. Even if a magician has not received formal training and has awakened naturally under the rule of the glorious Holy See, his combat power cannot be underestimated. As long as the local lords can defect to the parliament, even half of these people can set foot on the land of the kingdom. But this must be guaranteed by force. Gretel thought for a moment, raised his head from the teacup, and stared at the opponent. Can the council capture that city? Even if it captures it, can it hold it? Can it station several great magicians above level 15? Or, can it station a legendary mage? It's impossible to even think about it. Capture a city on the other side of the strait, that's the rhythm of total war. Even if the glory Holy See makes peace with the Orc Kingdom, it is estimated that they will mobilize all their troops and pull out the nail. How is that possible? Mrs. Alva glanced at him angrily. Just let the Lord lean towards us. There are some things and some people, just turn a blind eye and don't investigate too hard. Just in this way, you can save many people. How about it, Master Nordmark? Please, don't you want to do me a favor? But I really can't say without seeing anyone. Gretel spread his hands with a grimace. How about I make a list and you send someone over to do a rough sketch of the items listed on the list? This is probably unreliable. Gretel thought uneasily. For medical students who have never had an internship, even if they get high marks in the diagnostics course, if they actually go to clinical practice, the teachers will have to keep an eye open. What's more, the probability that the operatives sent by the Congress have received medical education is approximately 0. The medical records I got back are probably a waste of time. Thank God only 30% of them are usable. But he would definitely not do it if he were allowed to cross the strait and go to the area ruled by the glory Holy See. What a joke! Before his combat power exceeds that of the legendary mage, he will never go to the enemy-occupied area. Mrs. Alva couldn't help but laugh when she saw the vigilant look on his face, the way he wanted to jump up from the sofa and run back to the Thunder Tower every minute. She raised her hand and pressed it comfortingly. Okay. To accomplish this, it will take at least half a year of back and forth. The first is to prove that his youngest son was murdered, which has already been done. Second, to make his the firstborn shall not fall into the same pit. Don't look like you're running away. There is also the Lord of Thunder behind you, which really puts you in danger. Your teacher can demolish the Tower of Songs. Greet turned around and accepted this explanation. Then, he expressed doubts about not falling into the same pit. You want to use remove disease on him? No, we are going to convince him to use the vaccine. Mrs. Alva narrowed her eyes and smiled slightly. Once bitten, twice shy. Although the disease removal potion is considered a standard potion for healers, it is estimated that the Lord still dare not use it. After all, the youngest son died from this magical technique. Even if he dares, Mrs. Alva is confident that the people sent can fool him into not daring. Can you still believe those people from the glorious Holy See? On the contrary, vaccines can also be shipped in batches and randomly sampled to win people's trust. There are so many male and female servants in the Lord's mansion, and there are so many poor people on the streets. You can grab a few and try them out. Hearing her being organized and explaining all these considerations, Gretel had to admire her. The only problem is, this takes time. My cowpox preservation experiment has not been completed yet. It will take at least 3 months to make sure it will not expire before I can safely transport it to the other side. Mrs. Alva looked at him dumbly. Look up and down, left and right, horizontally and vertically. It wasn't until he saw that Greet was on pins and needles that he picked up the teacup, stirred the milk tea inside with a small silver spoon, and said softly, "We can afford to wait for this little time. Dear Mage Nordmark, perhaps what you should consider is how to make the Lord of Ostend trust you and be willing to let you treat his son. A 5th level mage and 5th level priest. Even though he published several articles in Arcane and Magic, he was still unknown to a certain lord under the rule of the glorious Holy See. Why should people look for him instead of looking for those prestigious high-level healers? Is he young? Or is it because his consultation fee is low?" Greet simply spread his hands. "Isn't this something you should be thinking about? I'm just a doctor, doctor. I don't lack this patient. If I really want to let go of the surgery, I can go to the almshouse and walk around, 365 days a year, from morning to night." Mrs. Alva laughed again. The crow's feet at the corners of her eyes curved slightly, her voice was soft and her demeanor was calm. "Yes, we have considered it. So I want to ask you, Master Nordmark, are you willing to cooperate with our plan?" "What's the plan?" "Of course it's a hype plan. Greet is now a 5th level priest. It is impossible to immediately reach the 10th level. He can only find another way. It just so happened that Greet had recently revealed that I can cure diseases that cannot be cured by therapy. Mrs. Alva's idea was to try her best to increase this reputation. First of all, write a few articles of sufficient weight, preferably, create a few powerful enough magics. Let you have a place in front of high-level healers, so that when they encounter difficult and complicated diseases, they will not say the first thing. But at least I can think of you." This is what he wanted to do, and he has been saving information. Of course, it would be best if someone is willing to help publish articles or even sponsor research. Gretel smiled. "What's next?" "Secondly, of course, I will get you some patients and increase my reputation. The author, meow, got a booster shot today, my arms are sore, my whole body is listless, and I'm whining. My shoulders hurt so much, and the back of my neck hurts. My chest feels a little tight now. Did I get a blood clot from the vaccine? Could I have a pulmonary embolism? Meow meow, please subscribe, please give me monthly tickets, please recommend votes, please give me book reviews, please ask for all kinds of things. Ask for a guaranteed monthly pass. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right?" Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 515. Let's make a deal first, I don't want to cut hemorrhoids every day. Greet bounced like an exploded cat. From the hair to the cervical vertebrae, from the shoulders to the tail vertebrae, every inch is filled with reluctance. Hemorrhoidectomy is so annoying. Mainly just annoying. All day long, it was dilation, ligation, removal, and another treatment. If you do it too much, it becomes a completely mechanical operation, which is very boring. Even a foreign body in the rectum can change the brain. According to the anorectal department, they collected all kinds of rectal foreign bodies, large and small, scattered and whole, dead and alive. If you want to hold an exhibition, collect 100 or 200 exhibits. There will be no problem and no duplication. Well, this doesn't mean that he wants to work with the anorectal department, he is an emergency surgery. If possible, he still wants to do something big. Mrs. Alva raised her glass and drank, her whole body shaking with laughter. After laughing for a while, he put down the teacup and knocked a crisp sound on the white porcelain gold-rimmed coaster. She tightened the curve of her lips and said seriously, Okay, I definitely won't introduce these. Hemorrhoids and other things are easy to talk about but not easy to hear, and it's not easy to mention them in public. If you want to be famous, of course you have to find someone upright. Tisk, the child who was born without an anus could have made a big publicity long ago if she had seized the opportunity. It's no longer possible now. Times have changed and it's too easy to offend people if we turn around and make things worse. So which one is better? It must be admitted that Mrs. Alva's mobility is quite good. A magician of the magic control system, who deals with people every day and knows best who has gossip and whose family has difficulties. If this matter were left to the autistic otakus who were the majority among magicians, they would probably not be able to accumulate 100 cases a year. But Mrs. Alva sent a few disciples to casually go out for a walk, and then brought a magician over from the Department of Transformation. 44 years old, level 7 magician, alchemy branch of the transformation system. The right little finger and ring finger developed numbness half a year ago. In the last half month, the wrist began to swell, affecting fine operations. I went to the medical branch and saw several magicians, but to no avail. Have you visited other temples? Especially the God of War temple. What a joke. We are magicians, why should we go to the temple to see it? Mrs. Alva winked at Greet from the side. Some magicians are really unwilling to go to the temple to see a doctor, and would rather wait in line for a few days to see the magicians in the medical branch. If you can't make it, there are still healing potions you can buy anyway. I drank a few bottles of healing potion. I also removed the disease. The magician's brown beard was messy, and he stretched out his big hand stained with white ash for Greet to see. It's no use at all. I can't hold my hands tightly now. I can't do any work at all. Indeed, the magician's hands are still inferior to the magician's own hands in terms of fine operations. Gretel felt sad and nodded gently. What action can't you do? Show me. Tisk, my fingers and ring fingers are numb, and my wrists are swollen. This matter can be big or small. Muscles, blood vessels, nerves, if you are unlucky, it may be a problem with the spine and cervical spine. Gretel thought to himself that he might not be able to guarantee a solution to the problem. The transformation magician handed his right hand to Gretel, circling his thumb and index finger, trying to put them together. However, the shape of the fingers was weird, something wasn't quite right, and they couldn't form a perfect circle. Greet's heart moved, and she took out a piece of paper and handed it to him. Here, put the tips of your thumb and forefinger together and try to squeeze the paper tightly. Squeeze it as hard as you can. Use as much strength as you can. The transformation magician obeyed his orders. Greet stood nearby and saw him tightening his lips and pinching them with all his strength. The blood on the tip of the thumb has faded a bit, it's obvious that he has used enough strength. However, Greet pulled out the piece of paper without much force, fluttering and landed in front of the two of them. The transformation mage lowered his shoulders in frustration. That's it, that's it. I can't take anything. I've used the healing technique several times, but it's useless from my fingers to my wrists. Froment's test is positive. Ulnar nerve injury. Greet narrowed his eyes slightly and quickly flipped through the anatomy diagrams in his mind. The ulnar nerve, a continuation of the medial bundle of the brachial plexus, snakes downward from the upper arm to the palm of the hand. Therefore, if you just apply the healing technique on your fingers or wrists, it may not be effective. Bend your ring finger and little finger and see. I can't bend very well, I don't have much strength. Gretel silently flipped through the book and silently recited it in his heart. The ulnar nerve is easily injured at the wrist and elbow. If the elbow is injured, in addition to the above symptoms, there will also be flexion dysfunction of the ring and little finger distal segment, usually only flexion weakness. Injuries to the elbow. He repeated these words, smiled at Mrs. Alva, and asked her to lend an empty room so that he could examine the patient. The other person took off his shirt, and Gretel could see at a glance that the patient's right arm was obviously thicker from the bottom of the shoulder to the top of the elbow. What's going on with you? Greet reached out and touched. How long? It's been more than 20 years, right? The transformation magician lowered his head and glanced at his right upper arm, not caring much. Anyway, it's been more than 20 years since I discovered it. It doesn't hurt or itch, so just let it go. Will it grow? It seems to have grown up. Well, I remember it wasn't this big when it was a child, but it doesn't feel like it anyway. Greet nodded slightly. If there is no pain, no itching, or no feeling, then no treatment is given. This situation is quite common. He carefully checked the condition of the parcel. The surface is smooth, no redness, swelling, or ulcers. Surround the front, inside and back of the right upper arm, ranging from 3 cm below the shoulder joint to about 10 cm above the elbow joint. It feels flexible when touched, with no obvious tenderness, and you can move when you push it. It looks like a lipoma or fibroma. Is this the cause of the swelling? Seeing his serious face, the patient was obviously a little uneasy and asked over and over again. But it's been growing for so many years, it's not painful or itchy, it's far away from the finger. How to treat it? Cut it off. Gretel shook his head slightly. He only has preliminary suspicions about what the tumor is, whether it is benign or malignant, and whether it is related to the inability to move his right hand. He needs further examination and differential diagnosis. Wait a minute, I'll borrow a magic item above level 12 for inspection. The first step in the examination is to take a plain X-ray. Gretel said as he opened the door and went out. As soon as he touched the doorknob, the door opened with a bang from the outside. Greet jumped back and narrowly missed being hit by the door. Then he saw a menacing scene outside and a white-robed mage walking in. Ramos, didn't you come to me for treatment? Why did you change your mind again? And you, I haven't offended you, why are you trying to steal my patients? Suddenly I discovered that today is Gretel's birthday. Happy birthday, little Greet. If you want to give a reward today, please scroll back and give the reward directly to the character. Thank you. You can add star points. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, and ask for all kinds of things. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 516. Steal patience. Greet is not impatient, angry, or angry. Under the surprised gaze of the patient, the corners of his eyes slightly curved, revealing a nostalgic smile. Stealing patients was something that didn't happen in hospitals before. Between circulatory medicine and cardiothoracic surgery, between urology and urology, between orthopedics and neurosurgery. Overtly and covertly, everyone uses their own methods. From applying for projects, applying for research funds, and publishing heavyweight papers in journals. To hold academic seminars, give lectures in various places, and perform demonstration surgeries. Then the directors of various departments competed with each other, in person and privately, with guns and sticks. Of course, establishing a good relationship with the emergency department and asking the emergency department to send patients to them is also one of the common methods. In his previous life, from resident doctor to chief resident, then to attending physician and deputy chief physician, he had seen a lot of ups and downs over more than 10 years. However, it's been a long time since I've seen such a crude method of directly standing in front of a patient and asking him why he wants to change doctors. Gretel smiled slightly and remained silent. Speaking of which, he has been practicing medicine in this strange world for so long, and he has never been overtaken by others as a patient. The reason is probably because what he treats are hard bones that others don't want. Either he is penniless or a poor person who cannot afford a few pennies. Either in the face of a great plague, the number of patients increases rapidly, and even the healers in the city cannot cure it. Either it's an emergency, and there are no other healers nearby. Or, the doctors are at a loss, and if he goes up and gives it a try, he won't ruin other people's face. Slowly, when he got to this point, Someone actually came directly in front of him to grab the patient. Greet looked up. The white-robed magician standing in front of him has a higher mage level than him and the same arcane level as him. The 3 silver stars on the mage badge represent an 8th level magician, the 4 white rings outside the silver stars represent a 4th level arcanist. Hey, speaking of which, he has published so many papers, why hasn't his arcane level increased yet? Could it be that the teacher has accumulated arcane points? To say that those who are lower than him are probably those in the background. Not everyone can have a legendary mage as a teacher. He slowly turned his gaze from the white-robed mage who came to ask questions to the patient standing beside him with an embarrassed look on his face. Then, he returned his gaze and smiled at the white-robed mage. "What is your name? How long have you been treating him? What disease do you think he has? How did you treat him?" The white-robed mage's eyes narrowed slightly. "I came in a hurry just now, and I was very angry. Only then did I notice that the person opposite him was both a 4th ring arcanist. Moreover, he is younger than him, and his mage level is 3 levels lower than his. What does that mean? It means that other people have greater potential than him. This means that if there is any minor friction, the big guys will favor each other." Jason Tarn, a 4th level arcanist, an 8th level magician, affiliated with the Spellweaver, he calmed down and nodded to Gretel. "I have been treating Ramos for half a month. In my opinion, he was overworked and injured his wrist." He glanced at the patient beside him who was gradually relaxing and pointed at his wrist. "In the past half-month, I have operated on him 3 times from his wrist to his fingers, and told him to rest and apply heat regularly. I estimate that he should be able to fully recover in 2 or 3 months. So your judgment is that it is tenosynovitis? It's not entirely unreasonable. After all, ulnar nerve damage is mostly caused by nerve entrapment in the wrist." Greet smiled and nodded. Gret Nordmark, 4th level arcanist, 5th level magician. Thunderhorn. Jason Tarn's heart was shaken, and the way he looked at the other party had changed unknowingly. Gretel Nordmark? That guy who published relevant papers in both Arcana and Magic? The magician who invented penicillin and how to use cowpox? My own teacher lamented more than once, how come he is from the Department of Plastic Surgery, why is he not from the medical branch? Why did he steal his own patients? Hey, if I had known it was him, so what if I was robbed by him? Why bother to come and ask for guilt? He wanted to withdraw immediately. However, after taking a look at his patient, he stopped and leaned closer to Ramos. "After I treated him, the condition of his fingers improved, but the effect was not satisfactory. What do you think will happen to him?" In his peripheral vision, Greet's newly acquired patient moved closer to the white-robed mage. He looked at her and then at Greet, with a little guilt in his eyes, as if he was embarrassed. "You were dragged here, right? Maybe you were dragged to him because of feelings. In the previous life, those big guys who used all kinds of tricks to steal patients were not just doing it for their own fame and fortune. He also often saw 2 directors arguing with each other, which eventually turned into slapping each other on the table. My treatment method improves faster. My method has a better prognosis." Gretel's heart softened slightly. He took a gentle breath and said seriously, "I'm not sure yet. I need to add some more checks. Wait, I need to borrow something. Mrs. Alva? Mrs. Alva, are you there?" Mrs. Alva came slowly from the next room. Since there was no conflict between the 2 magicians, there was no need for her to interfere. At this moment, Greet knocked on the door and called for someone, and she came out to respond. "What to borrow?" "A magic item of level 12 or above. Any type, just use it here and return it after use. Borrow it on site and use it on site." Gretel asked the transformation magician to take off his coat and raise his arms. Then, he skillfully activated detection magic and looked forward. His eyes immediately narrowed slightly, and then suddenly widened again. As he expected. The culprit that caused the change magician's right hand to remain unchanged was indeed the tumor on his right upper arm. Attached to the upper arm next to the humeral shaft. Under the X-ray film, or in other words, the image taken by detection magic, you can see a low-density mass with clear and smooth edges. And the part next to the bone. Protrusions can be seen on the surface of the bone, and there is a broad base connected to the humerus. As for the inside of the bone, Greet looked around the circle and nodded slightly. This is it. It turned out to be this. On the outside, it looks painless, harmless, but on the inside, it has grown large enough to compress the nearby ulnar nerve. To be on the safe side, Gretel went up along the patient's right wrist, from the wrist to the elbow, from the elbow to the shoulder, and from the shoulder to the neck, taking pictures all over. After making sure that there were no obvious lesions, at least, no obvious straightening of cervical spine curvature, calcification points, bone hyperplasia, and no compression of nerves, he confidently pointed to Ramos' right upper arm. It's here. It's this tumor. You can use detection magic to see that the image here is wrong, and there are already strange things on the bones. Jason Tarn gave him a suspicious look. He also released the spell and looked intently. Then, the white-robed mage let out a heartfelt exclamation. The mystery is up there. That tumor, how did that tumor grow into the bone? Happy birthday, little Gretel. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thank you guys for your reward today. I will update it for 2 days in a row tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Oh, my arm still hurt. Scroll back to see the X-ray. Thanks to Ed for the 10,000 starting coins. Thanks to TN and Cantham for the 100 starting coins reward. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 517. With an exclamation, Ramos's face turned pale as paper. He turned his head hard, pushed his chin to the shoulder socket, and looked at the mass on his right upper arm. However, the light source was directly behind him, and the angle was wrong, making it difficult to see clearly. Ramos could only bend his waist, then bend his waist again, bending so fast that he almost fell to the ground. Greet rushed over to help him. With only 2 steps left, a pair of mage hands flew up behind him, one to the left and one to the right, to steadily straighten the body of the transformation magician. Gretel. There is still a big gap between my own way of thinking and that of orthodox magicians. For example, at this time, I would not think of using the hands of a mage. As for orthodox magicians, the hands of the mage are more skillful than their own hands, and perhaps their hands are about to deteriorate. And, alas, this is the sadness that cannot be washed out in X-ray films. In his previous life, the doctor decisively took the X-ray film and pointed it to the patient. Look, something is wrong here. But now, detecting magic relies on the magician looking in the meditation field of vision. There is no way to copy, no way to record, no way to explain to patients, and as a teacher, there is no way to teach students to read the films. To achieve this, the picture in the meditation field of vision must be presented in reality. And this is something Gretel can't do. By the way, what's the progress of MS Almeida's research and development? When will the results be available? In Gretel's mind, all kinds of thoughts were whirling like a wheel. He helped Ramos sit down on the edge, pointed to his right arm, and explained to the 2 onlookers. Yes, I now judge that there is indeed something wrong with this tumor. You see, there is a fat density shadow next to the humerus, the density is uniform, and dendritic bony protrusions can be seen, extending into the fat density shadow. So I judge, it's a paraosseous lipoma. Turning around, looking back again, with confused expressions. Ramos couldn't see the X-ray image of his upper right arm, so MRS alva was a control type, so she just watched it. Jason pointed to the thickened arm and had a lot of questions. Why do you think this is fat? Why do you say this is a bony protrusion, not a blood vessel, or something else? Why do you say it's the tumor? It's so far away from your finger. Gretel. This, no matter how you look at it, is fat. Why should you say it is a bony protrusion? Imaging is a specialized subject. Why it is said to be a tumor problem must be explained from various aspects such as physiology, nerves, and anatomy. As for why it is paraosseous lipoma, not giant cell tumor of bone, not enchondroma, not sarcoma. Greet has a long list of differential diagnoses to talk about. For example, if it is liposarcoma, there should be uneven fat density, visible calcification, and sometimes destruction of adjacent bone. If it is osteochondroma, it should be a soft tissue mass with regular shape and no fat density. If it is a bone hemangioma, the calcification should be from coarse to fine, accompanied by bone destruction, periosteel reaction, soft tissue mass. But looking at the people in front of me, they probably don't seem to understand. Moreover, everything about imaging can only be guessed. If you really want to determine what kind of tumor it is recommended to perform a needle biopsy before surgery and send it for pathology, or freeze it during the operation and send it for pathology. However, there is no pathology in this world. Greet can only come up with the same solution. It is recommended to cut it off. What? Cut it off? Mr. Ramos turned pale again. In Greet's eyes, it looked like the blood flowing in the blood vessels on his face was first red blood cells folded in half, then folded in half, and then, all of this blood was replaced with Ringer's solution. He asked tremblingly. Want to cut off the whole arm? Will the bones be cut off? Will the blood vessels be cut off together? This really doesn't happen. Gretel closed his eyes and concentrated, and a virtual image appeared in his hand's silent phantom, outlining the situation inside the arm. Carefully explain to the patient. What needs to be cut off is just this tumor. I will use tranquility to relieve pain, so you won't feel any pain. Before starting to cut blood vessels and nerves, they will be pulled aside to protect them. Your tumor has grown very big and has invaded the bones. If it is not cut off, your arm will become increasingly numb in the future. If you are unlucky, something bad will grow. One question, one answer, and more questions arise. Greet's mouth was dry and his body was sweating profusely from being asked. It wasn't until he began to think about whether to charm humans or soothe to dispel the patient's fear that MRS Alva's face suddenly darkened. If you want to be cured, tell me the truth. Now, immediately. The 13th level great magician put down these words, and the effect was outstanding. Although she only mentioned this position, the 2 healers and 1 patient present read the ultimatum on her face. This is the Tower of Songs. Not your alchemy workshop. It's up to you whether you want to be treated or not. If you don't want to be cured, get out of here. Don't waste my time here. I'll cure it. I'll cure it now. Ramos jumped up like a rabbit with an arrow. He glanced at his right arm with nostalgia, and with a heartbeat, he raised his arm in front of Greet. Come on, where to do the knife? Gretel was silent. He was patient and careful, and tried his best to speak, but he couldn't catch up with the archmage's scolding. Well, in this world, patients have no dignity, no, low-level professionals have no dignity in front of high-level professionals. And MRS Alva stole his job. She said matter-of-factly, just stay here. I'll invite the students to come and take a look. They happen to be studying brain waves. Master Nordmark, is that okay? Can't. This room is surrounded by wallpaper and has carpets underfoot, so the sterile conditions are worrying. The patient's privacy must be protected during the operation, and unrelated people are not welcome to watch. Bystanders who do not abide by the sterile operating procedures will cause a lot of trouble. These words rolled around on the tip of Gretel's tongue and he swallowed them all. The patient has no dignity in front of the Archmage, and he does not have much room for bargaining in front of the Archmage. He thought quickly and smiled. This room is not suitable, ma'am. Can you find one big enough to accommodate the shelter cabin? Fortunately, Gretel's reputation with Mrs. Alva is still big enough. He successfully used his face to borrow a conference room, and moved all the sofas, round tables, flower pots, etc. to the side. The free area was enough for his operating room. But of course, the operation cannot start immediately, and the inspection must be completed first. I used Silent Phantom to draw the image of the inside of the arm that I saw, Greet discussed with the medical mage Jason Tarn. Can you make an entity according to the Phantom? It would be best if it can exist for a while longer and can last for several hours. The thing made by Mage's trick is too rough and can only last for an hour. I'll do it. Ramos immediately raised his hand. As a transformation magician, making things based on phantoms is his specialty. Do you want it soft or hard? What material? Does it need to be transparent? Or translucent? It's best to be translucent, and the color should be the same as the color I marked with the phantom. By the way, it's best not to move your right arm during the process, so that I can check it easier. This. Ramos thought with a grimace, slapped the space bag, and a rope flew out, tying his upper right arm and torso together. I will try my best. Gretel tightened his grip on the oak staff, closed his eyes, and breathed evenly. A small black and white snake rose into the air. First is the skeleton, the bones are white, opaque. Greet explained sentence by sentence. Ramos watched intently, and the fingers of his hands kept moving, and various materials that Greet recognized or did not recognize rose into the air. Soon, the 3D printed model was vividly displayed in front of everyone's eyes. On the outside of the backbone of the long white bones, there are many cumbersome things, as if they have grown into a coral. The outside of the bones is covered with light yellow lipomas. It was not a lump as they thought before, but a lobulated soft tissue tumor on each proliferated bone pedicle. The blood vessels that should have flowed straight down were forced out of a curve by the tumor. The light yellow lipoma was squeezed arrogantly in the middle of the arm, and the light red muscles, bright red and dark red blood vessels, and silvery white nerves were all displaced by it. On the top of the tumor, the nerves outlined in silvery white have become obviously swollen. Gretel breathed a sigh of relief. This kind of 3D printed model can be held in the hand, disassembled, put together, rotated, and even cut with a knife. In the previous life, only the most difficult surgeries and the most important issues could apply for use. Other doctors, if they can have a 3D reconstructed image on a computer to look at, they will be very considerate of you. You want money? As for the emergency department, haha. The emergency department, which is poor and busy, has some funds, but all of them are given to patients who evade the fees. Where can we get the money for this? And their chief director said it well. By the time you finish scanning, reconstructing, printing, and researching, all the patients will be dead, okay. All the patients who can afford to wait will be transferred to other departments. Fortunately, someone is helping me now. The 3D model is magnified twice. You can clearly see the bones, muscles, blood vessels, and nerves where there are deformations and where you need to pay attention. Read it over before going under the knife, and you will be confident, and you will no longer be afraid of something unexpected happening. Otherwise, hire a few transformation magicians to mold 3D models and train the apprentices in surgery. It's too difficult to say, but experienced hemorrhoid surgeries can always be trained with a few. Greet couldn't help but start thinking. Well, starting with Mr. Ramos, I wonder if it is possible to negotiate the condition of exempting him from medical expenses and working in the hospital for half a month. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @RidingPigTiger for the 500 starting coin reward. Thank you @Xylo for the reward of 100 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 518. The inside of the arm, is this what it looks like? Jason Tarn stammered, his eyes almost bulging. If Gretel didn't know the cause and effect, and suddenly saw it, he would definitely give him a diagnosis. If you suspect hyperthyroidism, check out the 3 thyroid hormones. If you want to be on the safe side, it is not impossible to consider the 5 thyroid hormones in one go. But Mr. Jason clearly didn't need that. He greedily touched the model he had just made, from top to bottom, from bottom to top, and then opened it to take a look. Skeleton. The bones are rough and have many bumps. Blood vessel. The blood vessels that twist and turn, constantly branching and bifurcating. Muscle. Muscles one by one, stacked on top of each other, connected to the bones. There are blood vessels running through it. There are also silver-white strips, which the Nordmark mage calls nerves. It is said that it is because of the oppression of that thing that Ramos' fingers become unable to bend, cannot pinch tightly, and suffer from various discomforts. So, is it enough to cut off the tumor? He pulled on the pale yellow thing, pulled it, let it go, pulled it again, and let it go. The tumor was stuck between 2 muscles, as if it could be pulled out smoothly if you stretched out your hand. What if we don't use the knife? Can we just shrink the tumor? Gretel held his chin and hesitated. In other words, this is the difference between internal medicine and surgery. When an internal medicine patient sees a lesion, the first thing he thinks of is medication, the first thing a surgeon thinks of is surgery. For example, if there is a tumor in the liver, the internal medicine department thinks, let us perform radiotherapy, chemotherapy, embolization of blood supply vessels, or cryogenic freezing, put some liquid nitrogen in to freeze the tumor to death. The surgeon thought, let us cut him off once and for all. As long as it is cut cleanly, there will be no further trouble. Of course, radiotherapy and chemotherapy can damage the body, and embolism cannot be removed by freezing. Surgical resection is also harmful to the body, and it is easy to remove 3/5 of the liver. There are arguments every year about which is right and which is wrong, and which option is better for the patient. As for this lipoma, what can be done to relieve the patient's pain, whether it is internal medicine or surgery, magic or surgery? None of this matters. What matters is how to treat patients well. Gretel lowered his eyes. In lipoma, and fat, the cell volume can increase or decrease, but the absolute number of cells does not decrease or increase. Unless you cut it off with a knife, if you want to make it smaller. What can you do? He raised his eyes shining brightly. In modern medicine, the method of removing fat is surgery. Either a quick and easy operation, or liposuction. Ultrasonic waves, high-frequency electric fields and other methods are used to break up the fat, and then it is directly extracted through negative pressure suction. Gretel understands the principle, but if he is allowed to control it, this arm will be shattered into pieces. He and the patient looked at Jason expectantly. Master Jason scratched his head. I can give it a try, I know a spell that can make people lose weight in a short time, maybe. Huh? Is there really such a spell? Magic version of fat loss? Oops, you have to find a way to learn this. If you learn it well and use it to help people lose weight, the money will be huge. Even if it is used for medical treatment, some patients are indeed so fat that it affects their health. While he was thinking about it, Master Jason raised his fingertips and white light flashed. Greed pressed down quickly. Wait, try something else. Are you kidding me? Something you haven't tried before? Now I pat my head and remember that there is such a thing. Can I use it on the spot? Even if we don't conduct Phase I, Phase II, and Phase III clinical trials, we should at least conduct animal experiments first. He persuaded her, gave Mrs. Alva a few smiles, and finally dragged her from the Tower of Traveling Songs to the hospital down the mountain. This is his territory, everything is easy to talk about. Gretel gave an order, and a barbarian security guard took out a half-sized black pig from the laboratory's breeding room. Come. Try. Jason Tarn. Gretel smiled and pointed at the black pig. That spell of yours, that one that makes people thin, would you like to try it on pigs first? The pig was just halfway through eating when it was suddenly pulled out and struggled helplessly in the hands of the barbarians. Before Master Jason could react, he waved his hand. Hey, wait a minute. Late. The 100-pound pig had only grown bones and had not had time to fatten up. It was dropped by this magic and was reduced to skin and bones on the spot. What we need is not to lose weight all over the body. Gretel shook off sweat, and so did the patients around him. Gretel sighed and asked the barbarian to pick up another black pig. With a wave of his hand, the mage's trick flew out and drew 2 circles the size of teacup mouths on the pig. If it can be accurately used in this circle to make this small piece of fat smaller or disappear, then it is safe to use it on people, right? Moreover, the effects of spells can also be observed on the spot. Pigs, even if they are not fat yet, it is not a waste if they are cut and eaten. The only problem is, where does the fat in pigs come from? Greed was completely at a loss. He had never observed a pig from this angle. He only knew about the hooves, ribs, leg meat, and pork belly. It doesn't matter, there is no fat when you throw a magic spell away. At worst, try again in another place. Master Jason thought for a moment and accepted this explanation. He muttered something in his mouth, his fingertips flashed, and he pressed it. Before touching the pig leg, I wrinkled my nose in disgust. Gretel looked on amused. Okay, it's his fault that he didn't wash the experimental animals thoroughly before bringing them over. Please pay attention next time. Most of the animals that have been used for experiments will need to be dissected and cleaned in advance. It is also necessary. The light from Master Jason's fingertips faintly fell on the pig's leg. He was obviously also trying hard to control the scope of the spell. The light was flickering and barely touched, and a thin layer of sweat formed on his forehead. Under the unblinking gaze of 8 eyes, the pig leg sank silently, leaving a pit visible to the naked eye. Orange size. This seems a bit big. Ramo sweated on his forehead. His low questioning voice was drowned in the noise. The black pig let out a long whine and struggled desperately. The barbarian was distracted, and his hand relaxed and he failed to catch it. The black pig struggled to break away, limping, and flew towards the laboratory. For a moment, there were screams, dodging, the sound of test tubes and flasks falling to the ground, and the sound of people falling over. Amidst the roar of the barbarians, Gretel shrugged and spread his hands towards Master Jason. It seems like its muscles were injured too. Otherwise, it wouldn't have looked like that when it ran out. How do you know? Ah, there was once a bishop who accompanied me to pick out a leg of lamb in the middle of the night. The sheep was limping and bleeding like it was cursing someone. The black pig was caught again and tried the second leg and the third leg one by one. The pork leg deflated very smoothly, but was it the fat or the muscle that was burned, or the nerves were damaged? Master Ramos looked at Greed with eyes filled with gratitude. Thank God Jason wasn't directly involved. If this spell were pressed on his arm would be disabled immediately. After trying out the 4 pig legs, the poor black pig lay there, unable to escape at all. Master Jason was sweating on his forehead and muttered, "Let me try again, let me try again, there is lard on its belly anyway." Gretel good-naturedly motioned for him to try. Master Jason took a deep breath, and the light on his fingertips lit up, shrunk, lit up again, and shrunk again. After going back and forth several times, he shivered and carefully pressed it on the black pig's belly. There was another high-pitched whine. The black pig collapsed directly to the ground, its hooves twitched several times, and it looked like it had been hit hard. "Gretel, Bernard. I got it, boss. I'll kill the pig." The barbarian ran over happily. Dissecting something like that is the boss's hobby, and of course he has to do it himself, but killing pigs, bleeding them, removing their hair, etc. For God's sake, even if he, the little boss, has this skill, he really doesn't have the strength. Cut open the pig legs with one knife, and the fat will collapse and the muscles will shrink. Cut the pig belly with one knife, and the smell of blood and stench will hit your nose at the same time. Obviously, when Master Jason casts a spell, the pig's intestines broken, broken, broken. The transformation magician stared at the white-robed mage with sad eyes. Fortunately, he didn't let him get his hands on it. Otherwise, would I still have this arm? In the bloody contrast, Ramos finally realized that he had no choice. Half an hour later, he lay down on the operating table, his back facing the sky. "Hey, don't shave my armpits." "That's called preoperative disinfection, disinfection," Greet said fiercely. "Have you not read my thesis? Disinfection is a must. If you want to have arm surgery, you have to shave off all the hair from your shoulders to your elbows. It's a secret, I'm already starting to regret asking you to do that surgery. It's too late to regret." As soon as Greet used the calming spell, Mr. Ramos lay like a wooden fish and closed his mouth completely. Gretel was able to begin surgery. After the surgery to reattach a severed limb at the barbarian gathering, this level of surgery was no longer difficult for him. Make separate incisions through the front and back sides. The four mages' hands transformed into four small retractors, pulling the skin apart. "Then let me do it, okay?" Master Jason was eager to try next to him. He watched the whole process of Gretel's phantom model being made, dismantled it and touched it with his own hands. "Do you want to dig out the tumor?" He feels that he should be able to do it. Gretel glanced at him calmly, stretched the muscle bundle, and carefully freed the first blood vessel from it. Use the mage's hand to make a small fist, protecting the delicate blood vessels. "Which blood vessel is this?" The weather is pretty good today, ha 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 ha." 3,000 words. Got an extra update. One more update and it's all over. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 519. A question silenced the other party. Gretel glanced at Master Jason in victory, lowered his head, and continued working. "Want to start cutting tumors?" Snort. Although lipoma resection is only a level 1 minor surgery, paraosseous lipoma resection must be at least a level 3 surgery because it has penetrated deep into the muscle and is close to the bone. Senior attending physicians can work independently, while junior attending physicians must be watched over by superior physicians. Just you. Have you finished memorizing the 5th edition of surgery? Oh, let alone the 5th edition, I haven't written the 1st edition yet. Have you achieved the goal of killing 1,000 mice? Sorry, there is no one who professionally raises mice in this world. Is the teacher taking action? Necromancers have probably been employed before, and medical magicians have probably never been employed, most of them have not. Have the retractors pulled hundreds of units? Have you tried all kinds of appendicitis? Have you passed the regulatory training and obtained your medical license? Has 1 year of hospitalization been completed? You want to start cutting out the tumor before the senior doctor who teaches you has nodded? Are you thinking about eating peaches? Interns like you who have no experience at all, can't hold a needle holder, and have never passed aseptic procedures are not qualified to sew skin, so stand back. Don't go near the operating table. He gathered his mind and analyzed the threads on his hands, moving lightly, evenly and quickly. Biceps, pull apart, triceps, pull apart, brachialis, pull apart. Brachial artery, free and protected, brachial vein, free and protected, cephalic vein, median nerve, ulnar nerve, radial nerve. There are also various branches and side branches. If they can be freed and protected, try to free and protect them. If you can protect it more, protect it more. For a magician of the transformation system, one right hand is equal to about a career and half a life. Anyway, I've already put on the silver dragon magnifying glass, so I'll do it slowly. After incision, it was discovered that the tumor reached up to the lower edge of the greater tubercle of the humerus and down to about 7 centimeters above the right elbow, and was growing between the biceps and triceps muscles. Greed was dissociating, hissing in the cold air, and muttering. Look, if you had taken it off earlier, nothing would have happened. Now that it has grown so big, the nerves and blood vessels on the inside of the upper arm are all blocked, causing displacement, bending, and edema. This is not a disease but a ghost. Poor Mr. Ramos was lying on the operating table, his whole body restrained by a tranquilizing spell, and he couldn't even roll his eyes towards Gretel. There is no way to complain to Gretel. You talk as if I can get rid of it. A few years ago, you weren't in Nevis a few years ago. Who should I go to get rid of it? Those necromancers. Greed pulled apart all the muscles and freed the blood vessels and nerves that had been fully protected. The huge yellow lipoma was finally exposed to everyone. It's not a complete piece, but it's clumps and clumps, obviously divided into leaves. A yellow-white nerve passed right through it. The envelope is quite complete. Gretel carefully picked up the doula with his mage's hands and looked underneath. At the base of the lipoma, a coral-like bone growth is formed, which is closely connected to the humeral shaft. Tisk, trouble, these bone growths need to be shoveled off. Leon, bring me a shovel and add a demonized weapon. Okay, sir. Leon Carlos, who was allowed to stand opposite the operating table and help pull hooks and pass instruments, and played the role of first assistant, simply agreed. The mage's hand flew up and brought over the surgical instruments Gretel wanted. The instrument made by the dwarves is added with mithril, which makes it sharp, light, and tough. It is also convenient for casting spells. You can shovel it with your hands while guiding the healing spell to protect the incision. Gretel muttered while working. Leon, remember, if a tumor like this has a complete capsule, you must be careful not to break it. It is better to be slower and bluntly separate it from the outside, but to take it out completely, it's broken. I don't know what bad things are inside. It won't be beautiful if it spreads to the whole body. I understand, sir. Just like the rot sac of the necromantic system, it must be taken out completely and cannot be broken, right? Yes, that's right, but what I'm talking about is actually a cancer cyst. I haven't seen any necromancy-type rot cysts before. Hey, if you have a chance later, go to the Tower of Sleeplessness and ask for a general teacher. Whether it's Archmage Edgar or Archmage Grom, they should all be willing to give it to me. At most, they can agree to it and let them watch while the surgery is being performed. Gretel secretly added something to his notebook and continued working. Hey, sir, how did you cut off the tumor? Otherwise, it's so big that it can't be pulled out. At this time, it became clear that Greet's surgical approach design was prescient. The tumor was too big, and it was not convenient to remove it from one direction. The main reason was that the muscles and nerves would need to be torn apart too much in order to have a place for the tumor to come out. The damage to the normal body is too great. However, it is easy and pleasant to remove the tumor in two parts through the front and back incisions. Well, just make a small cut at the branched part. Alright? Take it out. Bingo. Gretel removed the tumor, removed the bone base, and reset the muscles, blood vessels, and nerves one by one. He flew a mage hand in the direction of Master Jason and made a small move. Master Jason immediately ran over. What's up? Then, treatment. The mage's hand disappears. Another silent phantom flew up and formed an arrow shape in the air, pointing to the area that needed treatment. Throw away healing, throw away healing, throw away healing. Especially the ulnar nerve that is compressed and edematous. The contact point between nerves and the hands of the mage. The outer wall where the blood vessels are in contact with the mage's hand. Gretel happily crossed his hands and raised them in front of his chest, controlling the silent phantom to show Master Jason the way. Well, he has already done the most difficult work, and the rest of the strenuous work can be left to others. He just saved his energy and took a good look at how the edematous nerves returned to normal little by little under the treatment. Hey! Don't get too close. Don't put your hands on the incision. Just throw it from a distance. The second half of the surgery, which involved therapeutic techniques, went quite smoothly. No need for anastomosis, no need for stitches, just a handful of treatments. When the suturing, oh no, healing of the skin was completed, Ramos's entire right arm became thinner, complete and clean, as if nothing had happened. Except it's too clean. The hair on his body and armpits were smooth and shaved like a shelled egg. Mr. Ramos was lifted off the operating table and moved his right arm, then his right hand. Soon, he said in surprise. I can move. No more numbness. My fingers can also be pinched. The thumb and index finger of his right hand formed a perfect O shape and were pointed directly in front of Gretel's eyes. Gretel was also pleasantly surprised. Clinically speaking, in previous lives, surgery to remove tumors was faster, but nerve recovery was much slower. Slowly allow the body to absorb edema, exercise slowly, and slowly restore function. It takes several months from the time of surgery to complete recovery. How is it like now, when a large number of healing techniques are thrown in without any effort, and they are already in an instant? Really good, I need to take note of this. In the pocket of the surgical coat, an oak stick protruded from a tree root, and the endless ink pen was rolled up to write. I was writing, and suddenly I looked back. Mr. Tarn, what are you doing? Jason Tarn stretched out the little finger of his right hand, and he and Mr. Ramos hooked me and I hooked you, playing hook, hang, 100 years, no lies. Although, your method of testing finger muscle strength is not standard. Obviously, although Master Jason did not assume the main task of this treatment, he was much more excited than Gretel. He checked it one finger at a time, then pinched Mr. Ramos' right arm left and right, up and down. After pinching for a long time, he raised his voice and called Greet. Mr. Nordmark, do you have any magic items above level 12? I really don't have such a thing. The highest level magic item I have on hand is a level 9 endless ink pen. No matter how high it has to be the energy center of the mage tower. That thing is said to be over level 15, but it is impossible to carry it everywhere. Gee, in the future, the mage tower should be made a part of the hospital. At least CT, MRI, and other large equipment can be directly connected to the mage tower. Fortunately, Cyrilla has it. Greet Pang by Fume blushing Nodmark went out in a familiar manner, gathered Miss Silver Dragon's wool, and opened Detect Magic again to investigate the situation. Wow! This bone is clean, Master Jason couldn't wait to exclaim. Nothing weird anymore. By the way, what about those things that grow into the bones? When did you remove them? I didn't see you cut the bones open. In front of Gretel, Mr. Ramos' right arm, which was too smooth, trembled violently. The transformation magician's face turned pale. It grew into the bone? Yes, Jason, you said that the tumor grew into the bone, didn't it get cleaned up? Will it happen again in the future? Greet breathed in, breathed out, breathed in again, breathed out again. Looking to the left, Master Jason's face was full of surprise. Looking to the right, Leon Carlos frowned slightly, obviously racking his brains and not yet figuring out what the problem was. As for Sarala, her eyes were shining and her face was full of excitement. It was obvious that he didn't intend to use his brain, he just waited for Gretel to reveal the answer to the mystery and put the answer directly into his mouth. It is indeed easy for laymen to read the film and cause problems and unnecessary panic. Forget it, he was already used to giving popular science lectures to patients, but it was just another one. He returned the tiara to Miss Silver Dragon, waved his hand vigorously between the two magicians a few times, and unfolded the silent phantom again, showing at the same time two plain X-rays of the lateral view of the anterior humerus before and after the operation. In the leprosy on the left, obvious branch-like shadows can be seen inside and outside the bones. The one on the right is neat and smooth, and it looks pleasing to the eye at first glance. It is indeed a standard good bone. Is this what you saw before? That's right. You see, it did grow into the bone. It's gone after the incision, but I didn't see you cut inside the bone. Master Jason's voice became smaller and smaller. In front of the patient, Gretel has summoned another phantom. Humerus, lipoma on the outside of the humerus, bony hyperplasia in the tumor. This tumor surrounds the bone. Do you see it? Using detection magic, what you see is a flat surface, so it looks like it has grown into the bone. Now remove the tumor. He points to the post-operative image on the right. These bony hyperplasia are gone, and the bones you see are clean. There has never been anything growing into the bones. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 520. Jason Cohen revolves around two images, looking at them. He clenched his hands into fists and pressed them tightly against his side, as if to control himself and not to reach out and touch away these phantoms. He stretched his neck forward and his eyes widened, wishing that his eyes, forehead, and entire upper body could all burrow into the image. Ramos opened his hand beside him, made a fist, flexed his fingers, twisted his wrist, and touched his arm. Up and down, back and forth. Every time I touch my armpits and feel the bare, hairless area, I can't help but grin. Sarah looked at this and that curiously. Leon Carlos is the most normal person among this group of people. He lowers his head and performs the duties of an intern and an assistant, throwing cleaning techniques on the operating table, under the table, and beside the table. Greet. Gretel was lying on the side, writing like flying. Paint a few strokes, take a look, paint a few more strokes, take a look again. Drawing X-rays, drawing 3D models, writing surgical records, I was very busy. Write a record. Write a paper. Ready to send. On MRS Alva's side, the plan had just been pushed forward and the first patient was brought over. If possible, it would be best to write a paper quickly and give it to her. Well, although this patient is not typical. To be honest, most of the difficulties in finger movement are due to tenosynovitis, and a small number of them are caused by shoulder and neck lesions. Paraosseous lipoma is really one of the best. No, it's not just 1 in a million. Paraosseous lipoma is considered a rare disease among lipomas. It seems to account for 0.3% of all lipomas. As for the proportion of causes of difficulty in finger movement, it may not be 1 in 100,000 people. Is there any journal that can publish rare cases? He suddenly turned around and asked. Master Jason made a message and came over to take a look. You're writing a thesis? Just this case? Let me see. This medical magician has extensive experience in publishing papers, or water papers. While looking at Gretel's records, he rubbed his chin and began to mutter. Ordinary magician may not work, it doesn't involve magic. Bend a finger. Spellweaver is run by our school of conjuration. Each issue can contain about 2 medical papers, but as far as I know, it has been fully booked in the past 6 months. Bend another finger. Medical Research is a journal run by the medical branch, but they prefer to discuss healing magic. In my memory, I haven't seen a single case in more than 10 years. Bend another finger. Otherwise, there are only a few periodicals published by the temple itself, but most of them are not read by anyone. Even they themselves use them to pad the bottom of the box. Snap, the ring finger and the little finger bent together and formed a fist. Unfortunately, apart from Ordinary Magician's Monthly and Medical Research, Greet is really not familiar with several other journals. Master Jason could only respond with a blank look after hearing that Master Jason knew everything about his family. After all, he had no worries about where to publish his previous papers. There are several articles, all taken by legendary mages. If they want to lose arcane, they will lose arcane. If they want to lose magic, they will lose magic. His confused look, in the eyes of Master Jason, was naturally interpreted as having no idea and don't know where to publish it. The white-robed mage thought for a while and stretched out a hand diligently. Do you want me to help? I'll go talk to the teacher and find some connections. I should be able to get into medical research. Otherwise, give me a second job. I can be responsible for writing. As he spoke, his paw turned a corner and touched the 3D model on the table. Of course, it would be even better if you could lend me this for half a month. Gretel laughed. He generously pushed the model over. I can lend it to you to read and help with writing or something. You write the first part first, which is your diagnosis and treatment process, right? As for finding a journal to publish a paper in, don't worry yet. Ms. Alva said she will arrange it. This paper, written by Greet first, Master Jason second, and Mr. Ramos third, was sent to the summit that day. Within a week, Ms. Alva wrote back. Medical Research has no published manuscripts. They still don't like individual cases. Ms. Alva stirred the milk tea with a small silver spoon and smiled apologetically at Gretel. Moreover, the current editor-in-chief of Medical Research insists that magic is the foundation of medical treatment. He even regards drug research as heresy. As for surgery, he always thinks that it is the job of necromancers. Then there's no way. Alas, among modern medical journals, there are also some that are more oriented toward basic research, some that prefer case reports, some that are biased toward internal medicine, and some that are biased toward surgery, to name a few. Greet smiled nonchalantly. It's just a paper. If you can't publish it, then you can't publish it. I'll publish it later when I have some big results, then, I will take back this paper. At worst, show it to Archmage Edgar or Archmage Grom. The necromancy school always likes this kind of knife-throwing thing. Maybe, you can even use their journals. But if something from Black Crow Swamp wants to become famous outside, it is inherently inferior to medical research, Sci. Ms. Alva watched with reluctance as the paper flew away from her hands. If the paper is published one day late, her medical star building plan will be one day late from success. I had no choice but to smile sadly. Okay then, I'll look around to see if there are any cases that are more influential and more likely to be published in journals. Greet was startled. You must not look for it based on this standard. As long as it's something special that can't be cured by therapy, or it's too expensive to cure, I'm interested in taking it here. After all the hard work, Mrs. Alva was persuaded to keep the standards for recommending patients as they were. Greet held the manuscript, turned around and went to the Tower of Sleeplessness. Black Crow Swamp was indeed very interested in his paper. Archmage Grom decided on the spot that the paper could be cut into the queue and published next month. Of course, the condition is that they make a copy of that 3D model. By the way, how's your blood type detection magic doing now? The progress is very unsatisfactory. Greet held his head. There was too much data to study, and it was difficult to compare the points. Moreover, Greet strongly suspected that the feedback map he drew by hand was either inaccurate or missed some details here and there. In the final analysis, it was his own fault. His painting skills are at least 1,000 miles away from regular sketching. It can still be done by taking class notes, drawing a schematic diagram, and explaining the situation to the patient or the patient's family. I want a photo-style representation of what I see and what I get, and use it as research material. Thinking too much. Alas, again, when did MS Almeida's magic be developed? If he could do it, he could scan a bunch of blood samples and then send the results to Tailing for data analysis. Then you can sit back and wait for the results, and then work backwards from the results to figure out how to cast the spell. Beautiful. Archmage Grom was not surprised at all. How can it be so easy to develop a magic? 3 to 5 years is a smooth year, 10 to 8 years is normal. Like Greet, he has already created a few original magic tricks not long after arriving in Nevis. That is called extraordinary talent. Even though he is extremely talented, it is said that the Dragon Clan helped him with his electrocardiogram measuring magic. Moreover, since Gretel proved blood typing, more than one great magician in Black Crow Swamp has led his own team to develop blood testing magic. There is a great magician among them, and he even brought in friends from the prophecy department to help, but until now, haven't they achieved nothing? He comforted Gretel with a smile. Don't be in a hurry, it's not that easy. Hey, if you are in a hurry to advance your research, there will be a good opportunity next month. What? There is a delegation of vampires coming over. You know, vampires, their research on blood is extremely sophisticated. If you can sneak into the reception group, or become friends with one of them, you might be able to communicate with them. This. Greet hesitated and struggled. Gretel, a social terrorist, said that he was really interested in seeing the vampires and other things, but joining the reception group would be unnecessary. As for becoming friends with people in a short period of time, he has no ability to do so. Of course, if a vampire is sick and injured, he needs to perform an operation on the person. Forget it, just stay honest and do your own research. At that time, find an opportunity to see what results they are interested in. I hope that the results discussion at that time will not be too overwhelming. Gretel silently returned to the hospital and immersed himself in research. He has already sent out a paper on blood typing and is waiting for it to be scheduled in the Ordinary Magicians Monthly. 2 experiments on blood transfusion have recently been conducted, both of which were for parturient women who had suffered massive blood loss in the workhouse. One case succeeded, one case failed. The reason for the failure was that the mother was sent too late and the cross-matching took too long. If there was a reliable blood test magic, the results would be available with just one photo. After all, in the previous life, the RH classification was not considered. If it was type A, B, or O, the results would be available in an emergency room in a minute or two. Greet wants to find more cases for further verification. However, things backfired. 2 weeks later, his teacher took him out of the hospital and threw him into the reception group. In this meeting, important people from vampires, dwarves, barbarians, orcs will come. You are young, it will be good for you to see more now. Gretel had no choice but to accept the order. Only when I arrived at the reception group did I realize that there was someone else responsible for the administrative work. He was not responsible for setting up the venue, accommodation, catering arrangements, and sightseeing tours. For someone like him who has teachers and backstage and is temporarily inserted, all he has to do is memorize a bunch of information, figure out who the person is, and wait to chat with the guests. Gretel, on the other hand, didn't even need to take the initiative to open up the situation. A bunch of people came to him. Gretel. Greet, long time no see. In the Dwarf Kingdom, the two partners of the King selection team, Gavin and Jenna, jumped on tiptoes and waved. Hello, dear healer. The barbarian, who was almost twice as tall as the dwarf, bowed to Gretel respectfully. Mr. Miracle Doctor, this blonde orc seemed familiar. By the way, where are the vampires who can exchange blood test magic with me? 3,000 words. All updates are completed. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 521. The lights flickered. Drinking and drinking each other. At the dinner, there was a lot of laughter and laughter. Greet yawned painfully. So why do I stay up late? Why was it that I was assigned the job of hosting the vampires when there were so many friends here? Why can't I chat with dwarves, barbarians, orcs? Vampires cannot see the sun. Although dwarves are not afraid of sunlight, they are more adapted to the dark environment underground. Among the orcs who visited this time, those with higher status such as tiger men, lion men, and leopard men were equally adaptable to the night. The result of taking the greatest common denominator is that human beings, doing their best to be landlords, have no choice but to stay up late. Looking left and right, most of the magicians around them have something to offer. Magicians in this world are accustomed to going to bed early and getting up early, sleeping on time to restore their mental strength. It's not impossible to ask them to stay up late and work overtime, but it's really painful. Mr. Nordmark, are you tired? Are you going to take a rest? The customer next to him asked with a smile. He was holding a crystal clear tall glass. The dark red liquid in the glass was rippling with light and shadow, and the aroma of wine was fragrant. Even though Gretel could smell the smell of blood as soon as he took one look at it. Speaking of why vampires like to mix blood with wine, correction, mix blood with wine. It's not that Gretel doesn't understand this way of drinking. In his opinion, it's no different from mixing red wine with Coke or white wine with Sprite in his previous life. It's just for the same taste. However, the problem is that alcohol must be mixed with hemoglobin. Greet looked at it and wanted to give him a dose of Lonalone. Oh, no, I'm not tired yet, Mr. Sebesh. Greet shook his head seriously and continued to perform his diplomatic mission. At the same time, control yourself to focus on the other person's face and resolutely not look down. Damn it, why do I see gorgeous lace embroidered with gold thread, lace puffy cuffs, stockings, tights, and high heels on a man, even a vampire? Let's continue. Where were we talking about? Ultraviolet light. Yes, that's right, ultraviolet light. The vampire named Sebesh raised his glass with a smile, saluted Gretel, and took a sip. The liquid in the cup stained his pale lips with a deep red color, making his appearance even more charming. Master Nordmark, you are really a genius. After reading your paper, we separated the components of ultraviolet rays from the holy light and measured its energy. You study the holy light. Greet was startled. Vampires and undead creatures, the holy light will kill them twice as much. What kind of spirit is it to study the holy light despite such harm? Of course, it's just the holy light. Just grab a few holy objects, kidnap a few priests, whatever. Sebesh spoke calmly, as if he just said a trivial matter. Although Gretel knew that the conflict between the vampire clan and the Glory Holy See did not last for a day or two. The land occupied by the vampire clan is to the east of the kingdom of Rhine. The huge black forest has lush branches and leaves and does not see sunlight all year round. Due to the special geographical conditions, countless unique species grow on that land, many of which are magic materials specially needed by the parliament. Every year, a large number of hunters and herb collectors go to the Rhine kingdom to hunt for treasures. Bloody conflicts between the people under the rule of the Blood Clan and the Glory Holy See occurred from time to time. Back to the topic, according to calculations, the ultraviolet light contained in the holy light of the glorious Holy See is more than twice that of sunlight, so it can cause stronger damage to us. Based on this principle, our great Lord Earl has developed a very effective protective magic. Wow! Defense, protection, magic. I only know about physical protection, that is, UV protective clothing, protective masks, and protective glasses, and chemical protection, such as applying sunscreen with UV absorption function. Actually, you can also use magic sunscreen. Gretel's eyes lit up. Before he could ask any further questions, a lady with light golden curly hair drifted over in the fragrant breeze. Even though she was indoors, she was holding a small lace umbrella and her eyes were moving. Yes, protective magic made of silver powder. I don't know how many people can be burned to death before the protection takes effect. Yulia! Sebesh roared. Yulia covered her mouth with a silk handkerchief, giggled, and the skirt of her skirt brushed in front of the two of them and floated away. Mr. Sebesh watched her back for a while, then smiled helplessly. Alas, you've got to laugh. Yulia's family has always been at odds with our family. Fortunately, you are a friend of the vampire clan. There is no need to deny that you revealed the existence of ultraviolet light, which is very important to us. As for the shortcomings of this magic, I am here this time just to hope that you can participate in its improvement. Gretel was speechless. Well, as we all know, silverware, silver crosses, silver bullets, if there are bullets in this world, and silver holy water, are all very powerful against undead creatures. A certain earl on your side thought of using silver as a means of protecting against ultraviolet rays. Should I say that he is a talented person and bold, or should I say that his mind is as big as a black hole? He blurted out. The material used in your magic is silver powder. No, it's silver nitrate? Or some compound of silver. It absorbs ultraviolet rays and forms protection, right? That's the principle of this magic. Yes, Sebesh nodded. Gretel was confused. If silver compounds can be used to absorb ultraviolet rays and form protection, then other materials can also be used. By the way, what materials are those cosmetics made of? Ethyl hexyl salicylate? Homosalate? Isoamyl p-methoxycinnamate? Benzophenone -3, benzophenone -4? Gretel struggled to recall the ingredient list on the cosmetics box in her previous life. After only recalling a few, he gave up on this technical route. With the current level of technology in this world, none of the above can be synthesized. So, what to change? Which chemical has the strongest ability to absorb ultraviolet rays? Silver bromide? Nanosilver? No, it is still too cruel to let the vampires torment silver, otherwise, ozone. What is the industrial synthesis of ozone? It seems that ozone can be produced by using strong current and oxygen. Maybe you should ask the teacher for the specific method. Gretel lowered his eyes and thought for a moment, then raised his eyes and stretched out his hand to Mr. Celia. I have some ideas, but the details still need to be studied and experimented. Then, I am happy to participate in your research. Great. The young vampire's pale and cold palm held Gretel's right hand and shook it vigorously up and down. You just have to ask for any price. The vampires are always generous to their friends. Do you need gold, jewelry, or a beautiful virgin? I hope that you, and of course your friends, are willing to come together. It would be best if you can participate in my research and development of a magic, about how to identify blood. That's no problem. I'm the best at identifying blood. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of